Hey there, it's Scott Dikkers live on YouTube and Facebook. Hopefully you can hear me. If you can't, shoot me a comment, either on YouTube or Facebook, let me know. I am the proprietor of howtowritefunny.com, and before that I was owner, editor-in-chief of The Onion. Before that, I was a successful daily comic strip cartoonist and writer, and before that I was a professional voice actor. So many decades in the comedy business. Wrote a few books on how to write comedy, how to write funny, how to write funnier, and how to write funniest, and the most recent, how to write funny characters, spilling all my wisdom that I've attained all over the years about how to do this stuff. So today I want to get really into the basics of comedy, and that is, how do jokes work? Because I've Googled things like how to write a joke, and how to construct a joke, and how to tell a joke. And you get that Jerry Seinfeld video from the New York Times where he begrudgingly explains his process writing a joke. And that's kind of the only one. Maybe there's a couple other little ones. And I'm going to be doing a more like a produced video that I'll put up, and when it's done, I'll link to it in this video, that goes into more detail on like how to structure a joke. But this video is a little more in the weeds, a little more philosophical, a little more pontificatory about how jokes actually work. So first of all, what is a joke? In the business, in comedy, a joke is not two nuns walk into a bar or whatever, and then the little story, and then there's a punchline at the end. No, in professional comedy circles, the joke is the punchline at the end. An elaborate setup doesn't count as one joke. And, a joke typically is a laugh beat. So any line that gets a laugh. And they're all basically the same when you come right down to it. And the first thing you have to understand about jokes and how they work is the context. How are you hearing the joke? When are you hearing the joke? Who's telling the joke? That is everything. So the main way that jokes work is the person presenting the joke controls the context to the maximum degree possible. Now, let's say you're performing. Let's say you're telling the joke. Do you have confidence? Are you likable? Do you look funny? Do the people in the audience know you as someone who has said funny things before? What's your comedy brand? These things are night and day in terms of whether a joke is going to work. Now, a lot of this may seem like it's a lot of work to set up a reputation or a brand or whatever, but there are ways to engineer pretty instantly a certain amount of likability, a certain amount of a sense in the audience that, oh, this person is going to be funny. Maybe you sound funny. You have a funny tone. You have a funny quality to your voice. Dressing funny, looking funny. These things all help. So let's use the standard situation that we think about sometimes in these situations, the stand-up comedy situation. So if you're doing stand-up, before you even go on stage, you've already controlled the context to a great extent, because you're telling a joke to a group of people who paid money, or at least expended a lot of energy to get to a club and sit there and listen to jokes. So they're primed. They might be easy and ready to laugh if they're a friendly audience. They might be, half drunk. It might be a sparse crowd and they're skeptical, but you at least have that much of the context controlled, that they're in a place where jokes happen and they expect that. So when you walk on stage, they're assessing you as to, oh, how does that person look? How do they talk? What's their bearing? Are they confident? So if you stroll out confidently, smiling, happy, engaged, you're excited to be there with them, that's really going to help. That's really going to help. Whatever your jokes are, it's going to help them work. If you don't control any of that, if you come out weak, if you come out humble, like too humble, annoyingly humble, if you come out with no confidence, it almost doesn't matter what you say, you're going to flop. Now, a really interesting example, like a case study, is Stephen Wright, who comes out looking a little lost and disheveled, and he's almost like a deer in the headlights, and then he speaks in a complete monotone, and he starts telling these one-liners that are just brilliant zingers. What he's doing is very similar to what Andy Kaufman did, which is pretending to not have confidence, because they're actually toying with the audience to put them in a situation where they're ready to laugh at the performer for being lame, when actually the performer is brilliant, and it gives them more surprise. So this is one of the ways that jokes work. Jokes work by generating surprise. All humor requires some element of surprise. Not all surprise is funny, but all funny requires surprise. And so when Andy Kaufman would turn out to be brilliant, or Stephen Wright would turn out to be brilliant, that's surprising and funny, and people are delighted by that. And they create irony through the contrast of their appearance and their bearing versus the brilliance of their comedy. Now, most people are not playing at that level. Most people are coming out in their sport coat, they're waving at the audience, hey everybody, how you doing tonight? You know, you can do that, and there's a chance that you might be successful, but you're missing an opportunity to play with the tools that you have. Because again, the primary way that jokes work is by the person telling the joke controlling the context. So think about all the things that you can do. How can you dress? What can you be carrying? For example, this just popped into my head. What if you were the typical guy in the sport coat coming out, grabbing the mic, saying, hey everybody, how you doing tonight? But you had a piglet under one arm, and we're just carrying a live piglet on stage. That would be unusual. It would be funny. It would create a context in which people would be, they'd be look at you and they'd be like immediately, oh, I love this comedian. I can't wait to see what jokes they're going to tell. And obviously the jokes would probably refer to the pig, and it would all be very amusing. Little original things like that are huge, because again, the one element that all comedy requires is surprise. So think of ways that you can surprise the audience. Surprise doesn't just mean a zany punchline, an unexpected punchline to a joke. It means everything. It means a surprising context. It means some surprising detail, anything, all that stuff. These are tools. These are notes of music in a piece of music that you have complete control of. So you need to be thinking creatively and, with some originality as to how you're going to use those tools to engineer a context that's going to be the most beneficial for you and your jokes. Because a lot of these things, if used wisely, can make not very funny jokes work really well. When you don't use these tools, they can make really well-written material fail, because the audience will perceive the performer as not being funny or what have you. Okay, and then another big aspect of context in the way that jokes work is timing. So we all know that timing is critically important in comedy. And thank you, John. And timing is one of those elements that can always be controlled. So much of comic timing is based on people's experience perceiving previous jokes. So they heard something funny that was paced a certain way or had a certain amount of pause before the funny part before, and so they are somewhat primed to expect that next time, and they're expect to laugh at that. So you can obviously study other comedians, study current late night talk show monologues, stuff like that. These are some of the best people in the business, and just be aware of their timing. Then if you want to pull some Andy Kaufman stuff, you can toy with that. And Steve Martin did this back in the day. He would toy with this idea, and he would have pauses that were a little bit too long and too uncomfortable. A lot of comedians will wait so long for a pause that the audience will laugh at the pause, and then you get a bonus laugh when you come in and do the punchline after the pause. And you can experiment with your speed, like Stephen Wright was super slow. Other comedians like Kevin Hart are super fast. So there's no right or wrong with timing. It's all going to depend on what you look like and what your vibe is and what the audience expects to get from you. So that's a key way that jokes work. Now, I know this stuff is all theoretical. As I said, this video is very in the weeds and very philosophical, but I do want to end on some practical things. So now that that foundation is laid, and you know that the critically important thing to making jokes work is context, and that you as the joke teller or writer is essentially managing the audience's expectations and controlling the context, then you get to the mechanics of actually composing a joke. But let me back up 1 second and we talked about performing a joke or telling a joke. What about writing a joke? How do you control the context there? You don't have any control over the timing because you don't know how fast people are reading your joke, where they're seeing it, you don't know anything about them. Well, this is my expertise because I got started writing comic strips where they break the panels, usually the beats of your gag, into 3 or 4 boxes, unless it's a single panel cartoon. And that separates it and gives the audience cues as to what the timing is. They're supposed to go boom, 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 or whatever. That really helps. And I tried to do an Andy Kaufman thing and subvert that expectation and put the gags in different panels and sometimes remove the gag. And that was really original and people liked that. And that was kind of the key to my success doing comic strips. If it's prose and you don't even have the visual element, you just have writing, then you're controlling the context through, number one, the title, the thing that's going to get readers into your piece. You're going to try to make that title as funny as possible. That title is going to be a one-line joke. It's going to be as short as possible, and it's going to communicate the subject matter of your piece. It's going to intrigue them and make them want to read more, but it's also going to be funny. And then your piece needs to expound on that same joke. It needs to escalate and elaborate on that joke through a series of increasingly, successively more hilarious joke beats before they get to a punch at the end. And then you pace it out by putting a lot of straight stuff in the piece that sets the stage for a joke that's told straight and not with a smirk, because jokes told straight are always better than jokes told with a smirk. That's one way you can control the context. If you start smirking and goofing off, especially in prose, it kind of destroys the context and it makes people not want to laugh at your stuff. Now, some people get away with it. Dave Barry writes this way where it's all sort of jokey and silly. I'm not a big fan of that type of writing. I feel like it's too conversational, it's too on the nose. It doesn't really hit any satirical notes, but he's extremely successful. So I'm not going to argue with that. God bless him. It's amazing. He has his fans. They are not comedy sophisticates. Okay, his fans are just regular people who read newspapers or whatever. Now, if you're writing satire, the same rules apply. You want to tell it straight, and you want to make sure that every time you have a laugh line, again, that's what a joke is in a piece, a line that's going to get a laugh or that you expect to get a laugh, you need to set it up with some serious stuff. A funny written piece needs to be mostly serious stuff or mostly straight voice with an occasional zinger, an occasional punch. We call those joke beats in a piece. And that's how you control the pacing and the context. And one other huge tool that you have, depending on where you're presenting your writing, is what font are you using? How big is your headline? Do you have a graphic image with your piece? What's the overall presentation style? You know, what context is it in? I created The Onion as a fake newspaper to create the context of a serious news media engine, because I knew that would create a context that would prime people to be taking this seriously, which is exactly what I wanted, so that when it turned out to be funny, they would get this dramatic surprise, thinking, oh, it looks like a newspaper, it looks very serious and important, yet they're talking about absolute nonsense, thus, ha, ha, ha. So, again, those are the fundamentals on how jokes work, the ethereal, philosophical, foundational things that should always be considered before telling a joke. And this is even, one more. We're gonna do one more. We did performance, telling a joke, we did writing a joke, and when we talked about performance, we mostly talked about like professional stand-up comedy type performance. What about if you're just in person and you see someone on the street and you start talking to them and you want to tell them a joke? So that's a little different because you're literally on your feet. They're not expecting comedy. It's all about you, the way you carry yourself, your personality, your likability. And that's kind of a whole other thing. But there, you still are going to want to control the context as much as possible. You're going to want to be easy. You're not going to want to be aggressive, in their face, annoying. You're going to want to be cool, and you're going to want to be light on your feet. You're going to want to be happy and passionate. And you're going to want to be self-deprecating. I always get those two words mixed up. You want to be self-deprecating because that's always going to be more attractive than a joke that's supposed to make you look amazing or something. Now, you can tell a joke that sort of pumps you up or makes you amazing if there's a sense of irony about it, meaning that you actually mean to kid yourself. You can also make a joke at the other person's expense, like ribbing on them, picking up a little detail or a feature about them that you're going to make fun of in a inoffensive, fun, cute way, whatever. And those are ways that you can set the stage, create a good context for someone to be receptive to your joke. And in a situation like that, one-on-one, very good possibility they're going to laugh just out of politeness. So that's kind of an easy situation, but it still requires the same kind of, confidence and ease of bearing that you would need on stage. And it's something that practice makes perfect. Carlos, I'll address that at the end. Thanks for the comment. So now that you've got these sort of fundamental umbrella concepts about how jokes work under your belt, I want to get into the specifics because all jokes work the same. The way jokes work is you, the joke writer or teller, have an opinion about something, and instead of telling that opinion on the nose, like, I hate enchiladas, let's say that's your opinion. Instead of saying that on the nose, you say it subtextually through a joke. And the way you do that is you take your opinion and you filter it through one of 11 funny filters. These funny filters, let's see if I can remember them all from memory, are irony, reference, hyperbole, all right, wordplay, shock, reference, madcap, misplaced focus, meta-humor, parody, and analogy. Okay, those are the 11 different ways that you can make an opinion funny. You can mix and match those funny filters. They're like toys. They're like musical instruments in a symphony. The best jokes often have more than one at work. I don't think I said character. Did I say character? Yeah, it was one of the first ones I said. The most commonly used are character, irony, reference, hyperbole. Those are probably the most common. The others, like things like meta-humor, are really sophisticated and are primarily only used by sort of experimental or, comedians types of people. But there are types of meta-humor that are popular among the rabble, And if in that situation, if you're on the street just chatting up somebody, making fun of your own attempt at humor, laughing at yourself, that's meta humor. Laughing at the idea of laughter, that's meta humor. But once you take that opinion and you filter it through one of these funny filters, and I explain the details of how to use each one of these funny filters in my book, How to Write Funny. And if you go to howtowritefunny.com, the basics of how to use them are all in the free ebooks I have there. So you don't even have to spend the $8, $9 on the book. If you go to howtowritefunny.com, get one of those free ebooks, it's all in there. And that's it. You take your subtext, filter it through the funny filters. It comes out the other end a joke. And it's a volume game, okay? It's baseball, it's not brain surgery. So it's all about batting average. And the more practice you get, the better. So you think of an idea, and then you immediately think of a funny filter or two that you can filter it through. Like, go back to that I hate enchiladas idea. Think of the first funny filter comes into your head. Let's say it's irony, and you want, instead of hating enchiladas, you love enchiladas. You ate an enchilada just now, and it was so delicious that you have enchilada rainbows coming out of your fingertips. So if you said that in conversation to a person, something like that, that's an attempt at a joke. And that's using irony and hyperbole. So you try one. The more confident you get, you try more. You start to figure out which funny filters work best for you, your personality, and you can start to do this more on your feet. And then ultimately, like the sort of holy grail of comedy is when you're on stage and you have an act and you're performing, you can also come up with jokes off the top of your head. You can riff in front of an audience and be pretty funny because you've figured out how to go through that process of opinion, funny filter, joke really quickly in a way that suits your personal sense of humor and personality, and the stuff comes out a little more smoothly and you get a little more confident with it. Now you're cooking. Now you're cooking. Okay. So that's it. That's how jokes work. And you got any questions about it? Leave me that in the comments. I respond to all the comments. And yeah, Carla, you asked a question. I wanted to answer it. Any advice on finding fellow comedy writers / comedians when you aren't close to an open club? Yeah, so this is something that I had problems with growing up because all I wanted to do was comedy, but I lived in a small town in the middle of nowhere, and there was no internet, there was no comedy community, there was nothing. Yet I managed to find several like comedy peers, and we would do comedy projects together. We developed stand-up material, we made like audio skits, we made movies, we wrote, we did everything. And the way I did that was through church, believe it or not. I was in high school, and in this small town, everybody kind of went to like one of 3 churches or whatever. And in the church youth group, there was a guy in there who I could tell was kind of a, smart aleck. And so I befriended him. And he's my friend to this day. And we did a lot of projects together. And then the other way was in high school. Obviously, there are cliques in high school. There's going to be the nerds. There's going to be the comedy people. Those were my people. So I found those people. Now, let's say you don't have that. Well, there's the comic book shop. There's, clubs. Like, use your resources. You have the internet. Search for people doing comedy in your area. Put an ad out. Like there are, when you're not of high school or college age and you're not automatically clumped together with a bunch of people, you're stuck with, reaching out through the internet, through social media, through like local, and again, if there's no comedy club, there must be something. Maybe there's a local bar. Maybe you can talk to a local bar owner and see if they'll let you do like a comedy night or something. You never know. And get some practice telling jokes in front of other people. But I think you're talking about fellow comedy writers, comedians, as opposed to finding fans. And so that's how I would do it. I would just put the word out and I would start doing. Here's the other thing is when you start doing something, when you start doing comedy, other people who are interested in doing comedy will find you. Because a lot of the way that I found these people was before I met them, I was drawing cartoons on my own. I was writing stories. I was making like audio skits on my own. And when you do that obsessively, it creates this force of gravity that draws like-minded people to you. They find you. If you're doing stuff and putting it out there, that's pretty essential. All right, everybody, this video has gone on and on and on. That's okay. I haven't done a video for a couple of weeks, so I figured I'd pontificate on this one. And thank you so much for listening and watching. Again, for more, you can go to howtowritefunny.com for a lot of free resources on how to write funny. You're welcome, Carlo. And I hope you all have a delightful evening. Take care. Talk to you next time.